Today, I am going to talk about a time so far behind us that even memory itself feels like a dream. It was a time when the world was quieter, darker, and slower. A time when humans measured life not in minutes or years, but in seasons, shadows, and the movement of stars. This is not a story with heroes rushing toward victory, nor kings shouting commands from golden thrones. This is a gentle walk backward through old history, meant to be listened to with half-closed eyes, like a fire murmuring in the distance while night settles in. Imagine, for a moment, that the noise of today fades away. The hum of machines softens, and the glow of screens dims. Roads empty, and cities dissolve into darkness. Beneath all of that, older layers of time begin to rise, like ancient stone uncovered by slow, patient hands. We begin not with a date, but with a feeling. The feeling of an early morning, tens of thousands of years ago. The air is cool, and mist drifts close to the ground. The sun has not yet appeared, but the sky is slowly changing from deep black to a soft gray blue. A wide plain stretches outward, broken by distant trees and the slow movement of grazing animals. There are no borders here. There are no written names and no maps. There is only land, sky, and life moving at its own unhurried pace. Somewhere near the edge of a forest, a small group of humans is waking. They do not wake to alarms, they wake to light, to sound, and to instinct. Someone stirs near the embers of a fire that burned through the night. Another turns over, wrapped in animal hide. A child shifts closer to warmth. Their faces are calm and relaxed, shaped by generations of survival and quiet observation. These people do not know they are considered ancient. They do not think of themselves as part of history. They simply exist, as naturally as the river that flows nearby. This is the world before history had a name. Before writing, before cities, and before monuments meant to last forever, there were stories carried only by breath and memory. Knowledge passed from one voice to another, changing slightly each time, like a song hummed differently by each singer. And yet, even here, history is already happening. One person stands and stretches, looking toward the horizon. They are watching the land, as humans have always done, searching for signs. Movement in the grass, shapes against the light, the promise of food, or the warning of danger. This watchfulness, this quiet attention, is one of the oldest human habits. Nearby, tools lie scattered on the ground. There are stone blades shaped carefully by hands that learned through repetition, and a wooden spear smoothed by time and use. These objects are simple, but they carry intelligence within them. Each edge and curve represents lessons learned over lifetimes. This is not a boring history. It only feels boring if we rush it. So, we slow down. The fire crackles softly. Someone adds a piece of wood, and smoke rises straight into the morning air. Fire, once feared, is now familiar. It provides warmth, protection, and a place for people to gather. Around the fire, stories begin. Around the fire, language grows. Words here are not written, but they are meaningful. They carry warnings, memories of past hunts, and descriptions of places beyond the hills. Language is still flexible, still young, and still shaping itself to human thought. As the sun finally lifts above the horizon, light spills across the land. Colors awaken in the golden grasses, dark soil, and pale stone. Birds move through the air. Somewhere far off, an animal calls. This moment, repeated countless times across thousands of years, is one of the foundations of old history. It is not defined by wars or empires, but by mornings like this. Over time, humans begin to change their relationship with the land. They notice patterns. Seasons return, animals migrate, and certain plants grow in certain places. Knowledge deepens, not through books, but through careful attention. One generation teaches the next. They learn where to find water when the river dries. They learn which berries nourish and which bring sickness. They learn how to read the sky before a storm, and how to follow tracks without being seen. These lessons are never written down, yet they are precise. Memory becomes a living archive. As centuries pass, though no one counts them, humans spread across vast distances. Some follow coastlines, listening to waves that have never heard a human name. Others move inland, through forests and plains, adapting slowly to new environments. Wherever they go, they carry fire, tools, and stories. And with them, something else travels too: curiosity. At some point, humans begin to look upward more often. The night sky, free from artificial light, is overwhelming. Stars stretch from horizon to horizon, and the Milky Way appears as a pale river across the darkness. People notice that some stars move differently than others. They notice patterns, shapes, and repetition. These observations plant the earliest seeds of astronomy. There are no telescopes and no equations. Just eyes, patience, and wonder. The sky becomes a storybook. Certain stars mark the changing seasons, while others guide travel. Over time, myths grow around them. Animals, ancestors, and spirits are placed among the lights. These stories help people remember where they are in the vastness of the world. Below the sky, life continues at a steady rhythm. Hunting parties move out quietly, feet pressing into earth softened by dew. They communicate with gestures, glances, and subtle sounds. Success is never guaranteed, and failure is accepted as part of life. When food is found, it is shared. Survival depends on cooperation. This sharing shapes early social bonds. No one truly lives alone. Community is not an idea. It is a necessity. As generations pass, bodies change and minds adapt. Humans become better at planning, imagining futures that extend beyond the next sunrise. This ability to picture tomorrow is one of the most powerful forces in history. It leads, slowly, to experimentation. Someone notices that seeds dropped near camp sometimes grow. Someone notices that animals follow predictable paths. Someone wonders what might happen if people stayed in one place longer. These thoughts do not create instant change. Old history moves slowly. But once a question exists, it never fully disappears. Across different parts of the world, similar questions arise. This happens not because people are connected by roads or letters, but because they are connected by shared human experience: hunger, curiosity, fear, and hope. Time continues its quiet march. Ice ages come and go. Climates shift, and landscapes transform. Forests expand and retreat, and rivers change course. Humans adapt again and again, carrying knowledge forward like a fragile flame. Eventually, small settlements begin to last longer than a season. Temporary shelters become semi-permanent. Paths become familiar. Certain places gain meaning beyond survival: a bend in a river where fish are plentiful, a hill where the sun rises in a particular way, or a cave where paintings appear on stone walls. Ah yes, the paintings. One evening, long after the sun has set, someone presses a hand against a cave wall. They mix pigment with water, perhaps ash or clay, and blow it gently over their hand. When they pull it away, a shape remains. It is a human mark. This moment is quiet, almost accidental. Yet, it is one of the most important moments in old history. Because now, something has been left behind. Not a tool, and not a fire, but a symbol. As time moves forward, so slowly that no one notices, it leaves no sharp edges behind. There is no moment where one age clearly ends and another begins. Instead, old history drifts, like sand carried by wind, settling into new shapes without sound. The people we left behind continue living their lives, unaware that thousands of years are passing beneath their footsteps. Seasons turn again and again. Warm periods stretch longer, and cold retreats. Ice that once ruled the land pulls back toward the poles, and the world gently reshapes itself. Valleys deepen as glaciers melt, rivers widen, and new paths open where ice once stood unmoving. Humans follow these changes instinctively. They move with the animals, adjusting routes their ancestors once walked. Camps shift closer to water sources, and certain regions become familiar stopping points, visited year after year. Memory now includes places, not just moments. Some groups begin to stay longer in one area, not forever, but long enough to feel a sense of return. And with return, comes familiarity. Familiarity changes how humans see the land. A place is no longer just here. It becomes this place: the river bend, the wide plain, or the sheltered valley. Slowly, landscapes gain identity, even without names spoken aloud. Life continues quietly. Children are born into this world of motion and observation. They learn not through lessons, but through watching. A child sees how a stone is chosen, and how it is struck just right to form a sharp edge. They see how elders move carefully through tall grass, and how they listen more than they speak. Knowledge flows downward through generations like water through soil. Evenings are moments of closeness. People gather near firelight. The flames do not roar, they breathe softly. Shadows stretch and shrink, while faces glow warm against the dark. Stories are told here. Not stories with beginnings and endings, but fragments. Memories of hunts, warnings about dangerous places, and tales of ancestors whose names are spoken with respect. These stories shape how people understand the world. They explain what cannot yet be measured: why storms come, why animals disappear and return, and why the sky moves the way it does. In these stories, humans are not masters of the world, they are part of it. Meanwhile, tools become more refined. Stone blades grow thinner and sharper. Handles are shaped to fit the hand more comfortably. Some tools are carried for years, repaired instead of discarded. A tool begins to feel personal, becoming an extension of the person who uses it. This connection between human and object is another quiet step in history. Over time, humans begin to decorate. Not everything and not always, but occasionally. It might be a bead carved from bone, a pattern scratched into stone, or pigment rubbed onto skin before a gathering or ritual. These acts serve no direct survival purpose, and yet, they matter deeply. They suggest identity. They suggest meaning. They suggest that humans are beginning to see themselves not just as living beings, but as individuals within a shared story. Far away, across mountains and oceans, similar changes are happening. People who will never meet are making similar discoveries. They notice the same stars, learn the same lessons about weather and food, and invent tools that look surprisingly alike, shaped by the same hands and needs. Old history is not one single path, it is many paths moving forward together. At some point, humans begin to alter their environment in small ways. They clear brush to make movement easier, they stack stones to mark paths or important places, and they choose campsites carefully, returning to those that feel safe. These choices, repeated over generations, slowly transform the land. Not violently, and not suddenly, but enough to leave subtle marks: a clearing that stays open, a path that becomes smoother, or a fire pit that is reused again and again. These places hold memory, even if no one speaks of it. One evening, as dusk settles and the sky turns deep blue, someone notices something new. Seeds scattered near a camp have sprouted. Not randomly, but consistently. The plants look familiar and useful. Someone mentions it to another. They watch. They remember. Nothing changes immediately, but the idea lingers. This is how old history works. Ideas do not rush, they wait. Elsewhere, animals are observed more closely. Humans notice which animals tolerate their presence and which flee. They notice that certain animals return to the same areas, following predictable patterns. Trust begins, cautiously. It is not friendship, nor ownership, it is just proximity. A dog, descended from wolves, rests near a campfire. It is not fully wild anymore, but not fully something else either. It watches humans, and humans watch it back. They learn each other's signals. This quiet partnership will change history in ways no one can yet imagine. Night deepens. The sky turns black, thick with stars. Someone points upward, tracing an invisible line between lights. Others follow with their eyes. A pattern is forming, not in the sky, but in the mind. Time is now being measured, not by tools, but by observation. Moons pass, seasons repeat, and cycles become familiar. This awareness brings comfort. Predictability eases fear. And with comfort comes space for thought. Thought about the past, thought about what comes after death, and thought about forces beyond immediate understanding. Rituals slowly emerge. Simple gestures repeated at certain times, objects placed carefully, and silence held with intention. These moments do not demand belief. They invite reflection. Old history is not loud with faith, it is quiet with wonder. As centuries drift onward, humans become more settled in some regions. Shelters grow sturdier. Materials are chosen with care. Bones, wood, and stone form structures meant to last longer than a single season. These are not cities, nor villages as we know them, but they are places that feel anchored. Children grow up knowing the same river their grandparents knew. Elders tell stories of floods and droughts that happened long ago, though long ago might only mean a lifetime. Memory is stretching. And with stretched memory comes the earliest sense of history, even if no one yet calls it that. The world is still vast and mostly untouched. Forests whisper. Plains roll endlessly. Oceans move with ancient rhythm. Humans remain small within it all. Yet, something fundamental has changed. Humans are no longer just moving through time. They are beginning, gently, to stay. And as they stay, as they remember places and patterns, as they leave marks that outlast a single life, the deep roots of civilization are slowly taking hold, quietly, patiently, beneath the surface of an ordinary, peaceful night. Morning arrives without announcement. Light slips over the land, touching grass, stone, and water. In places where people have stayed longer, the morning feels familiar. Fires are rekindled in the same spots, and tools are picked up from where they were set down the night before. Footprints overlap with older footprints, softening into the ground. This sense of repetition is new. Not brand new, but new enough to be noticed. People begin to recognize that staying in one place changes how they think. When you know you will return tomorrow, your choices today feel different. Care replaces urgency, and planning begins to replace instinct. Near a riverbank, someone kneels and touches the soil. It is dark and damp. They press a seed into the earth, not as an experiment this time, but with intention. They remember what happened before, and they want it to happen again. Nothing dramatic follows. The earth remains still, the river flows as it always has, and the sky does not react. But beneath the soil, change has begun. This moment, quiet and uncelebrated, is one of the most important in all of old history. The shift from only taking what nature offers, to gently encouraging it to offer more. Farming is not born overnight. It grows slowly, unevenly, and full of uncertainty. Some seeds fail, and some seasons disappoint. But memory persists, and memory guides action. Elsewhere, animals are watched even more closely. Certain herds seem less fearful, and certain young animals linger near human camps. People begin to protect them, not out of kindness alone, but out of recognition. A mutual benefit forms. These animals provide more than food. They offer warmth, movement, companionship, and labor. In return, humans offer safety. Domestication, like farming, is not a single invention. It is a relationship that develops over generations. As these relationships deepen, daily life subtly changes. People wake with purpose tied not only to survival, but to care. Crops must be watched, animals must be tended, and tools must be maintained. Time fills itself with responsibility. With responsibility comes structure. Days begin to feel distinct. Certain tasks belong to certain times, and work becomes rhythmical. Morning tasks differ from evening ones, and seasons dictate behavior more strongly than before. Humans begin to live with time, not just inside it. This shift brings new challenges. Staying in one place means facing scarcity when conditions change. Floods destroy crops, droughts empty rivers, and illness spreads more easily among settled groups. Humans must learn new ways to respond. They store food, they share labor, and they build stronger shelters. Communities grow. They are not large, but they are stable. A few families live close together, children grow up knowing many faces, and elders become living libraries of experience. Leadership begins to form, not through force, but through trust. Those who know the land best are listened to, and those who remember past disasters guide decisions. Power, at this stage, is quiet. Language grows richer. New words appear for ownership, for exchange, and for time beyond the immediate. Stories become longer and more detailed. People speak not only of ancestors, but of descendants yet unborn. This is a profound change. To imagine someone who does not yet exist, and to care about their future, requires a new kind of thinking. It stretches human awareness forward through time. Rituals become more defined. Planting seasons are marked, harvests are acknowledged, and loss is mourned with shared gestures. These rituals anchor people to their place and to each other. They provide comfort in uncertainty, and they make time feel meaningful. At night, the sky remains unchanged, but how humans look at it does change. Stars are now linked to calendars, not just stories. Their movement helps decide when to plant, when to travel, and when to prepare for cold. Observation becomes practical knowledge. Stone structures appear. They are simple at first, upright stones placed intentionally, or circles formed. These are not homes, they are markers. Of what? No one fully knows. Perhaps they mark important times, or honor the dead, or perhaps they simply remind people of something they do not want to forget. Old history does not explain itself clearly, it leaves questions instead of answers. Trade begins quietly. A tool made of unfamiliar stone appears in a settlement. Someone traveled far, or met someone who did. Objects carry stories of distant places. Seashells appear far inland, and obsidian travels across mountains. These items are valued not just for usefulness, but for rarity. They connect people to a wider world they may never see. The idea of elsewhere becomes real. As connections spread, so do ideas. Techniques improve, and designs change. Innovation moves not through writing, but through demonstration and imitation. One person watches another shape a pot, one child copies a weaving pattern, or one community adopts a method that works better than the old one. Progress, in old history, is shared quietly. Yet, not everything is peaceful. Competition arises, disagreements form, and territory becomes meaningful. When land provides food, it becomes valuable. When value exists, conflict follows. Early disputes are small, personal, and often resolved through discussion or separation. Violence exists, but it is limited. Survival still depends on cooperation. As generations pass, humans grow deeply rooted to their surroundings. The land shapes them, and they shape it in return. Forests thin near settlements, fields open, and paths harden. The earth begins to show signs of long-term human presence. Still, nights remain calm. Fires glow, voices soften, and stars wheel overhead. People sleep with the quiet confidence that tomorrow will come, and that they know, at least a little, what tomorrow requires of them. This is no longer the world of constant movement. This is the world of early belonging. And as humans continue to belong, to land, to animals, and to cycles of time, they step ever closer to the threshold of recorded history, without yet knowing that words, numbers, and names will soon attempt to capture what has so far existed only in memory and breath. Morning light reveals more than before. In settled places, smoke already curls upward from several fires instead of one. Sounds overlap, soft voices, footsteps, and the rhythmic tapping of stone against stone. Life has become denser, not crowded, but close. Homes are no longer temporary shelters, they are shaped with intention. Walls are reinforced, and roofs are repaired instead of abandoned. People invest effort into places they expect to see again and again. This changes how humans feel. A home becomes something to protect, a settlement becomes something to defend, and a boundary becomes something to notice. As crops grow more reliable, food storage becomes common. Clay vessels appear, shaped carefully by hand, dried in the sun or hardened by fire. These containers hold grain, seeds, and dried meat, security against uncertain seasons. The idea of surplus quietly enters history. Surplus means time, and time means specialization. Not everyone must hunt or farm every day. Some people become especially skilled at certain tasks. One is known for making strong tools, another for weaving, and another for understanding the sky and seasons. Roles emerge, not enforced, but recognized. This is another turning point in old history. When people do different things, society gains complexity. Interdependence deepens, and cooperation becomes structured. Trade increases. Objects move between settlements more frequently, paths become familiar, and encounters with strangers grow more common. Not all meetings are peaceful, but many are curious. Humans are learning to interact beyond their immediate group. With interaction comes comparison. People notice differences, clothing styles, tools, rituals, and ways of speaking. These differences do not yet divide the world into rigid identities, but they do spark awareness. We are not all the same. This realization is subtle, but powerful. Timekeeping becomes more precise. Days are counted, seasons are named, and certain moments are anticipated. The future feels closer and more tangible. Numbers begin as gestures, marks, or stones set aside for counting animals, days, or stored food. Mathematics, in its earliest form, is practical and humble. Architecture evolves. Buildings are arranged thoughtfully. Some structures are larger, used for gatherings or storage, while others are private. Spaces gain purpose. And then there are the places that feel different. These are spaces not meant for work or rest, but for meaning. Here, rituals grow more formal. Offerings are placed, silence is observed, and movement follows tradition. These spaces hold emotional weight, connecting people to something beyond daily life. Belief systems take shape. Not fixed doctrines, but shared understandings of how the world works and why. The land provides, the sky guides, and ancestors watch. Death, once accepted quietly, gains ceremony. Graves are marked, and objects are buried with the dead. Memory extends beyond life. To remember someone after they are gone is another form of history. Conflict, too, becomes more complex. As settlements grow, resources matter more. Disputes involve groups, not just individuals. Defense structures appear, such as ditches, walls, and raised positions. Yet, warfare is still rare. It is too costly and too dangerous. Most conflicts are resolved through alliances, exchanges, or separation. Diplomacy, though unnamed, exists. Writing does not yet exist, but symbols do. Marks on pottery, patterns carved into stone, and signs recognized by many. These symbols carry meaning understood by the community. They communicate ownership, identity, or belief. They are the ancestors of written language. Art flourishes quietly. It is not monumental, but personal. Small figures carved from wood or stone, painted patterns repeating across generations, and music created with simple instruments like drums, flutes, and voices. These expressions bring joy, comfort, and connection. They remind humans that life is more than survival. Children grow up surrounded by knowledge. They learn by listening and doing. Education is informal but constant. Elders hold respected positions. Their value lies in memory. They know what has worked before, and they remember times of hardship and abundance. Time, now, is layered. There is today, there is memory, and there is expectation. This layered time is a defining feature of civilization. As populations slowly increase, landscapes change more visibly. Fields spread, forests retreat, and rivers are managed. Humans begin shaping the environment deliberately. This power is limited, but growing. At night, settlements glow softly with multiple fires. The darkness feels less absolute. Humans have pushed it back just a little. From afar, these lights might look like stars fallen to earth. And in a way, they are. Mornings now arrive with expectation. People wake knowing what the day will bring, at least in part. There are fields to check, animals to tend, tools to repair, and vessels to shape. Time feels divided, not endless. Tasks belong to certain hours, while rest belongs to others. This sense of order is comforting. Order creates predictability, predictability reduces fear, and reduced fear allows thought to wander further. In one settlement, someone sits near a fire, shaping wet clay between their hands. The motion is slow and practiced. Fingers press, turn, and lift. The vessel takes form, not rushed, not forced. This pot will hold grain, or water, or seeds for the next season. Before, containers were temporary, but now, they are expected to last. Durability becomes important. The same is true of homes. Walls are thickened, foundations are smoothed, and floors are packed carefully. Some homes are repaired many times over, layer upon layer, becoming quiet records of those who lived there before. People live atop their own past. This layering of life creates something new, continuity of place. A child grows up in a house their parents grew up in. They hear stories that happened in the same space where they now sit. Memory becomes anchored not just to people, but to walls, thresholds, and hearths. This deepens emotional connection. Elsewhere in the settlement, someone is counting. They use small stones, or notches carved into wood. Each mark represents something tangible: animals, jars of grain, or days until a seasonal change. Counting is no longer occasional. It is necessary. When resources are stored, they must be tracked. When labor is shared, it must be remembered. When obligations exist, they must be recalled. Memory alone begins to feel strained. This strain is important. It pushes humans to seek assistance, not from others, but from objects. Marks that remember when minds cannot, and signs that hold information silently. Symbols multiply. Some are simple lines, dots, or repeated shapes. Others are more complex, forming patterns associated with families, places, or purposes. At first, these symbols are reminders, not language. They do not speak on their own, they need a human voice to explain them. But they are learning to stand alone. In another settlement, far away, similar developments occur. Not because the people are connected, but because they face similar challenges: storage, counting, organization, and memory. Old history unfolds in parallel. Trade routes become clearer. Paths harden under repeated use, and certain places become known meeting points. Goods change hands: grain for stone, tools for cloth, ornaments for favors. Trade is not just the exchange of objects, it is the exchange of ideas. Methods travel, styles shift, and concepts spread. Someone returns from a distant place with a new way to shape a blade. Another brings back a pattern used to decorate pottery. These borrowed ideas quietly improve daily life. As trade grows, trust becomes essential. Agreements form, promises are made, and some are broken. Humans begin to understand reputation. A person's word becomes valuable, or worthless, based on past behavior. Social memory matters. Leadership becomes more formal. Certain individuals take on roles that persist over time, organizing labor, settling disputes, and managing shared resources. These roles are not kingship yet, but they are steps toward structured authority. With authority comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes record-keeping. Someone must remember who owes what, someone must remember past decisions, and someone must remember boundaries. Again, memory is stretched. Ritual spaces become more elaborate. Stones are arranged more precisely, offerings are standardized, and certain gestures are required, not optional. These rituals unify people, creating shared identity. Belief systems deepen, becoming not just explanations of nature, but explanations of human behavior. Why cooperation matters, why rules exist, and why certain actions bring harmony while others bring trouble. Morality enters history quietly. Rules are spoken, traditions are reinforced, and stories teach lessons. Children learn not just how to survive, but how to behave. Meanwhile, death becomes more structured. Burials follow patterns, positions of bodies matter, and objects placed with the dead carry meaning: tools, ornaments, and food. These practices reflect beliefs about life beyond death, or at least about remembrance. The dead are not gone, they are part of the community's memory. As populations grow, so does the sense of us. An us implies a not us. Boundaries become clearer. Symbols mark territory, clothing styles distinguish groups, and accents form in language. Identity solidifies. This is not yet nationalism, nor empire, but it is the seed of collective identity. Conflicts become more organized. Disputes over land or resources sometimes escalate. Groups confront one another, not as individuals, but as representatives. Violence remains limited, but the possibility of organized force appears. Weapons improve, not just for hunting, but for defense. Still, most days are peaceful. Life is repetitive, and that repetition is soothing. Grinding grain, repairing nets, shaping wood, and sharing meals. Meals, especially, become social anchors. People gather regularly, food is prepared collectively, stories are exchanged, and decisions are discussed. Communication grows more complex. Language develops new structures, ways to express past events clearly, and ways to discuss future plans in detail. Grammar evolves naturally, without study. Humans become better at explaining ideas. This ability sets the stage for something revolutionary. One day, someone makes a mark that is meant not just to remind, but to represent. Not a picture of a thing, but a sign that stands for something. A quantity, a name, or an idea. This is rare at first. Experimental. Uncertain. But once it exists, it does not disappear. Others imitate it, modify it, and combine it. Symbols begin to detach from direct objects and attach to concepts. This is the birth of abstract representation. Writing, in its earliest form, is not storytelling. It is accounting. It is ownership. It is obligation. Who stored what, who gave what, and who belongs where. Yet even these humble beginnings carry immense power. Because now, information can outlive the speaker. A message can wait, a record can persist, and a decision can be enforced beyond memory. Time itself begins to change. The present no longer holds everything, the past can be consulted, and the future can be planned with greater confidence. As this shift spreads, unevenly and slowly, humanity crosses an invisible threshold. History is no longer only lived. It is beginning to be recorded. Not everywhere, not all at once, and not completely. But enough. The settlements now feel older. They are not ancient in appearance, but they are layered with use. Paths curve naturally where feet have walked for generations, and walls lean slightly, repaired so many times that no one remembers their original shape. Hearths sit atop older hearths, ash pressed into ash, year after year. People sense this age, even if they cannot name it. There is a feeling that things have happened here. In one home, an elder runs their hand along a wall and tells a story about a flood that came long ago, when the river rose higher than anyone expected. The marks on the wall, faint and worn, are pointed out as proof that memory is tied to matter. This connection is growing stronger. Symbols, once experimental, are now recognized by more people. Certain marks consistently mean the same thing. A sign scratched into clay indicates a measure, another represents a person or family, and a pattern identifies stored goods as belonging to the community rather than an individual. These marks are still simple, but they are reliable. Reliability creates trust. When a mark can be understood by many, communication becomes less fragile. Information no longer depends entirely on who is present to explain it. Someone can leave a message, and someone else can return later and understand it. This changes behavior. Planning extends further into the future. Tasks are scheduled beyond immediate memory, and agreements are made with confidence that they can be recalled. Writing, still not fully formed, begins to quietly govern daily life. Those who understand these symbols gain influence, not power through force, but through knowledge. They are consulted, they keep track, and they remember for others. A new role appears in society, the keeper of records. This role is not glamorous, involving patience, repetition, and careful attention, but it is essential. With records, disputes can be resolved more fairly, storage can be managed more efficiently, and labor can be organized more effectively. Complexity increases. Settlements grow larger. Some become central places others depend on. Surrounding communities bring goods there, exchange news, and share rituals. Hierarchy begins to form, not rigid yet, but noticeable. Certain places matter more than others, and architecture reflects this shift. Larger buildings appear. These are not homes, but communal spaces. They are built carefully, meant to last. Their construction requires coordination, with many people working together following a shared plan. This cooperation strengthens social bonds, but it also strengthens leadership. Someone must decide where to build, someone must decide how resources are used, and someone must resolve disagreements. Authority becomes more visible. Still, it is not absolute. Leaders are accountable to tradition, to elders, and to collective memory. Power remains fragile. Religion evolves alongside authority. Beliefs become more structured, stories are organized into systems, rituals are standardized, and sacred objects are protected and preserved. The unseen world feels closer. People believe forces shape their lives, forces tied to land, sky, ancestors, or abstract principles like balance and order. Appeasing these forces becomes important. Ritual calendars form. Certain days matter more than others, and certain times require specific actions. Festivals emerge, marked by shared food, music, and ceremony. These events break the monotony of daily work, they reinforce unity, and they remind people that they belong to something larger than themselves. Art grows bolder. It is not just decoration, but representation. Scenes of life appear. People, animals, activities. These images tell stories without words, preserving moments. Music becomes more intentional. Rhythms are repeated, songs are remembered and taught, and performance becomes part of ritual and celebration. Culture thickens. Meanwhile, trade networks stretch farther. Materials travel impressive distances, and metals, rare and precious, begin to appear. Copper and gold are shaped not for tools at first, but for ornamentation. Their shine carries symbolic value. Wealth becomes visible. Not everyone has the same things anymore. Differences in possession emerge. Some have more storage, more livestock, or more decorated objects. Social stratification begins. It is subtle, but real. Children born into different households experience different futures. Opportunity is no longer evenly distributed. This inequality is new and unsettling. Rules are created to manage it. Customs define inheritance, traditions govern marriage, and obligations link families together. Social structure tightens. Conflict reflects this complexity. Disputes now involve property, status, and access to resources. Negotiation becomes formal, mediators are called upon, and decisions are referenced against precedent, what was done before. Precedent is a form of history. And now, history can be consulted, marks on clay tablets, symbols carved into stone, and tallies etched into bone. These records are imperfect, but they endure. For the first time, humans can argue with the past, and lose. Because the past is no longer flexible. It is written. This realization changes behavior profoundly. People think before acting, they consider how actions will be remembered, and they worry about legacy. Legacy is a powerful idea. Someone plants trees they will never see fully grown, someone builds a structure knowing it will outlast them, or someone records a name hoping it will be spoken again. Time stretches. Beyond this settlement, beyond this region, similar changes unfold in different forms. In river valleys, fertile land supports dense populations. Along coasts, trade flourishes. In dry regions, water management becomes central. Each environment shapes civilization differently, but the underlying pattern remains. Writing spreads, authority consolidates, and memory hardens. And yet, daily life is still simple. People rise with the sun, work with their hands, eat together, and sleep beneath the same stars their ancestors knew. The extraordinary hides inside the ordinary. One night, a scribe, though the word does not yet exist, sits alone, pressing marks into soft clay. The firelight flickers, and shadows move. They pause, looking at what they have made. These marks are quiet. They do not glow, and they do not speak. But they hold something fragile and powerful. They hold thought. When the clay hardens, the thought will remain. This is the moment humanity fully steps into historical time. Not because of a king, not because of a war, but because someone wanted to remember, and found a way to make memory last. The settlements now feel unmistakably permanent. They are no longer clusters of homes that might dissolve in a generation. They are places with names, spoken softly, repeated often, names tied to rivers, hills, ancestors, or events long past. To name a place is to claim it in the mind. People no longer ask, "Where are we staying?" Instead, they ask, "Where do we belong?" Streets, though not yet paved, form naturally between buildings. Movement follows habit. Certain paths are used daily, while others are used only during ceremonies or gatherings. Space becomes organized, even if no one planned it that way. At the center of some settlements, a structure stands apart. It is larger, heavier, and more carefully built. This is not a home, it is a place of authority, ritual, storage, or record, sometimes all at once. People enter it with awareness. Voices soften, and movements slow. Power now has a location. Those who control this space influence the community. They manage grain stores, oversee rituals, and protect records. Their decisions shape lives. Leadership is no longer temporary. It endures. With enduring leadership comes hierarchy. It is not rigid yet, but it is visible. Some people give instructions more often than they receive them, and some are listened to without question. Others work quietly, rarely consulted. This imbalance is not yet called injustice, it is simply the way things are becoming. Writing grows more confident. Symbols are standardized, and their meanings are taught deliberately. Children learn them alongside practical skills. Marks once made only for counting now record names, offerings, agreements, and laws. Laws, still simple, exist to maintain order. Do not cross this boundary, do not take what is not yours, or do this at this specific time. Rules are no longer remembered only by elders. They are fixed. Fixed rules change behavior. People act not just to avoid immediate conflict, but to avoid future consequences. The idea of punishment becomes abstract, something that may come later, enforced by authority rather than by immediate response. Justice becomes a system. Trade flourishes under this structure. Merchants, though not yet called that, travel known routes, carrying goods and information. News spreads faster than ever before. A drought in one region affects prices in another, while a conflict in a distant settlement alters alliances elsewhere. The world feels larger and smaller at the same time. People begin to sense that events beyond their sight matter to their lives. Currency begins to emerge. At first, it is not coins, but agreed-upon items, weights of metal, standardized goods, or symbolic objects. Value becomes more abstract. This abstraction is powerful. It allows exchange without direct need, it allows accumulation, and it allows wealth to be measured. With wealth comes ambition. Some seek influence, some seek security, and some seek remembrance. Monuments appear. Not massive at first, but intentional. Stones stacked to last, structures aligned with the sky, or objects placed to mark important moments. These are messages to the future. They say, "We were here, and this mattered." Religion adapts to this new world. Gods, or forces, take on clearer personalities. They gain names, stories, and domains. Some govern the sky, others the earth, and others human behavior. Priests emerge to interpret signs, perform rituals, and speak for the unseen. Their role grants them authority separate from political leaders. Sometimes these roles overlap, and sometimes they compete. Power now has many faces. Education becomes more formal. Children are taught not only skills, but traditions, laws, and beliefs. Knowledge is curated, certain stories are emphasized, while others fade. History begins to be shaped. Not all events are remembered equally, and not all voices are recorded. This selective memory will echo far into the future. War becomes more organized. It is still rare, but no longer accidental. Groups prepare, and weapons are crafted for conflict, not just hunting. Defense structures grow stronger. When violence occurs, it is deliberate. The aftermath is remembered and recorded. Victories are celebrated, losses are explained, and lessons are extracted. War becomes part of history, not just survival. Yet, most life remains ordinary. People wake, they work, and they rest. They worry about crops, weather, family, and illness. They celebrate births, mourn deaths, laugh during festivals, and argue over small things. The human experience remains familiar. What has changed is scale. Individual lives now sit within systems that outlast them. A person may die, but the settlement continues, the law persists, and the record remains. This realization changes how people see themselves. They are no longer just descendants of ancestors, they are ancestors in progress. This awareness is subtle but profound. Someone records a name knowing it may be read by someone not yet born. Someone obeys a rule established generations ago. Someone worships a god whose story predates memory. Time stretches in both directions. Empires have not yet risen, and kings have not yet claimed divine right, but the groundwork is laid. Centralization increases. Some settlements grow much larger than others, controlling trade routes, fertile land, and strategic positions. Smaller communities depend on them. Influence radiates outward. Cultural dominance appears as language, customs, and beliefs spread. Uniformity begins to replace diversity. This brings stability, but also loss. Unique traditions fade, local symbols are replaced, and difference becomes deviation. Old history is transitioning into something sharper. One evening, in a large settlement near a river, scribes gather to update records. Clay tablets are stacked, and symbols are pressed carefully. The process is slow and methodical. Outside, the river flows as it always has. It does not care about laws, it does not obey rulers, but it remembers everything in its own way. Humans, watching it, feel both powerful and small. They have built systems, they have captured thought, and they have shaped memory. The large settlements are now impossible to ignore. They dominate the landscape, not through height alone, but through influence. Roads lead toward them, goods flow into them, and decisions made within their walls ripple far beyond their borders. These are no longer just places to live, they are centers. People arrive from distant regions, bringing different accents, customs, and beliefs. The air hums with exchange, of objects, of stories, and of ideas. Markets form, busy and loud, filled with movement and negotiation. For the first time, anonymity exists. In small communities, everyone is known. Here, faces pass without names. This changes behavior. Rules become stricter, surveillance increases, and authority asserts itself more clearly. Order must be maintained. Architecture reflects ambition. Buildings grow taller, broader, and more ornate. Stone replaces wood, foundations are laid deep, and structures are aligned carefully, often with the sky or the river, symbolizing harmony between human power and natural order. Monuments now serve more than memory. They serve dominance. They impress, they intimidate, and they inspire obedience. Leadership transforms. Rulers emerge who govern not just through tradition, but through command. Their authority is reinforced by symbols, crowns, staffs, thrones, and titles. Power becomes personal. These rulers claim legitimacy through ancestry, divine favor, or conquest. Their names are recorded deliberately and repeated often. History now has protagonists. Administration expands. Officials track resources, labor, and population. Records multiply, archives grow, and writing becomes essential, not rare. Literacy remains limited, but its influence is vast. Those who read and write shape reality. Law becomes codified. Rules are written clearly and publicly, punishments are specified, and justice is standardized. This creates consistency and fear. People know the consequences of disobedience. Social classes solidify. At the top are rulers, priests, and administrators. Below them are artisans, merchants, and skilled workers. Further down are farmers and laborers, and at the margins are slaves, captives, and the dispossessed. Mobility between classes becomes difficult. Birth increasingly determines destiny. Religion intertwines with power. Temples grow monumental, and rituals become grand displays. Gods are portrayed as rulers of cosmic order, mirroring human hierarchy. Priests legitimize kings, and kings protect priests. This alliance stabilizes authority. Education becomes selective. Elite children are trained in writing, mathematics, ritual, and law. Knowledge becomes controlled. What is taught shapes what is possible. History is curated. Official versions of events are recorded, uncomfortable truths fade, and myths replace memory. Art becomes propaganda. Reliefs show rulers victorious, statues depict idealized power, and songs praise authority. Culture serves the state. Military organization advances. Standing armies form, soldiers train regularly, weapons improve, and strategy becomes deliberate. War is no longer survival. It is policy. Territories expand, borders are enforced, and conquest is justified. Empires begin to take shape. An empire is not just land. It is a system. Different peoples are governed under one authority, laws are imposed, taxes are collected, and resistance is suppressed. Diversity is tolerated only when it serves power. Infrastructure grows. Roads are built, canals are dug, and walls are raised. These projects require coordination, labor, and resources, binding regions together physically and economically. Time accelerates. Events happen faster, change feels more dramatic, and history gains momentum. Yet beneath this intensity, daily life continues. Farmers still rise with the sun, artisans still shape tools, and families still gather to eat. The extraordinary rests atop the ordinary. But pressure builds. Inequality deepens, resources strain, and dissent simmers. Revolts occur, crises erupt, and rulers fall. These events are recorded. Dates matter now, chronologies form, and cause and effect are analyzed. History becomes narrative. People ask not just what happened, but why. Philosophy emerges. Thinkers question authority, morality, and reality. They observe patterns, seek principles, and challenge assumptions. Not all are welcomed, some are silenced, but others influence generations. Science begins its slow rise. Observation becomes systematic, measurement improves, and prediction becomes possible. Knowledge separates from belief. Slightly. Timekeeping advances. Calendars become precise, years are counted, and eras are named. Humanity now knows where it stands in time. This awareness is powerful and dangerous. It fuels ambition, fear, and legacy. Rulers seek immortality through monuments and memory. They build not for need, but for eternity. Some succeed, but most fade. Civilizations rise and fall. Empires expand, fracture, and collapse. Ruins accumulate. Stone remains where people do not. Yet even collapse leaves traces, ideas, technologies, and stories that survive elsewhere. Old history is no longer quiet. It is loud with events, dense with meaning, and heavy with consequence. Still, beneath the noise, the same human patterns persist: hope, fear, love, and loss. The same stars wheel overhead, the same rivers flow, and the same questions linger. Who are we? Why are we here? And what will remain? The empires now stand tall. They stretch across vast territories, binding together lands that once knew only their own rhythms. Different climates, languages, and traditions exist under single banners. Administration reaches farther than ever before, like invisible threads pulling distant places toward the center. From the capital, Commands travel outward along roads worn smooth by countless feet and wheels. From the edges, grain, taxes, soldiers, and stories flow inward. Power concentrates, and with concentration comes both strength and fragility. Capital cities pulse with activity. Markets overflow with sound and color, palaces rise beside temples, and courtyards echo with the footsteps of officials carrying tablets, scrolls, and ledgers. Everywhere, writing appears, on walls, on monuments, and on everyday objects. Writing is no longer rare, it is authority itself. If something is written, it is believed. If it is recorded, it is real. Documents decide ownership, seals confirm truth, and archives grow vast, storing generations of decisions, laws, victories, and failures. Memory is no longer personal. It is institutional. Time is now divided carefully. Years are counted, reigns are marked, and dynasties are traced. History gains structure and direction. People know where they stand in relation to the past, and this knowledge shapes their expectations of the future. Scholars emerge as a distinct class. They study old records deliberately, compare accounts, search for patterns, and argue over interpretation. Some believe history teaches lessons, while others believe it reveals cycles that cannot be escaped. The past becomes a tool. Rulers use it to justify authority, tracing their lineage to legendary ancestors. Priests use it to reinforce belief, grounding rituals in ancient tradition. Philosophers use it to question everything, asking whether the old ways still serve the present. This tension creates intellectual richness and quiet unease. Cities grow crowded. People live close together, sharing walls, streets, and air. Innovation thrives in this density, but so does disease. Sanitation struggles to keep pace, while public works expand, aqueducts, baths, and sewers, standing as monuments to human ingenuity and necessity. Engineering becomes a respected discipline. The ability to move water, raise stone, and organize space elevates societies. Comfort increases, at least for those who can afford it. Urban life becomes complex, layered, vibrant, and unequal. Inequality becomes impossible to ignore. Luxury and poverty exist side by side. The wealthy display excess in clothing, homes, and feasts, while the poor labor endlessly, their lives precarious. Slavery and forced labor underpin much of this prosperity. Resentment simmers beneath the surface. Social unrest becomes more frequent, protests flare, and riots erupt. Authorities respond with force, reform, or distraction. Sometimes concessions are made, often they are not. Law grows increasingly complex. Legal codes expand to cover countless situations, courts operate regularly, and judges and advocates argue over interpretation. Procedure becomes more important than morality. Justice becomes something that can be navigated, if one has resources. Citizenship is defined carefully. Some are full citizens with rights and protections, some are partial members, and others exist entirely outside the system. Belonging becomes political. Philosophy deepens in response. Thinkers debate ethics, governance, nature, and the meaning of life. Some argue for reason and observation, while others emphasize tradition and order. Schools of thought form, disagree, and evolve. Ideas travel faster than armies. Science advances unevenly but steadily. Astronomers chart the heavens, physicians catalog symptoms and treatments, and mathematicians explore abstraction and proof. Knowledge grows, though it remains fragile, easily lost in war or neglect. Religion continues to adapt. Some faiths emphasize hierarchy and obedience, mirroring imperial order. Others emphasize compassion, humility, and inner transformation. New movements emerge, offering hope beyond status and power. Belief becomes personal for many. Art reaches remarkable heights. Poetry, drama, and history explore human emotion and conflict. Artists depict beauty, suffering, heroism, and decay. Architecture grows grand, arches, domes, and columns, each structure a statement of identity and ambition. Trade networks span continents. Caravans cross deserts, and ships cross seas. Silk, spices, metals, and ideas move constantly. The world feels interconnected. Yet connection brings vulnerability. Plagues spread rapidly, economic shocks ripple outward, and wars escalate in scale and destruction. Military power reaches its peak. Standing armies are professional and disciplined, weapons improve, and strategy becomes sophisticated. Warfare is no longer seasonal. It is continuous. Empires expand, then strain under their own weight. The cost of control rises, administration becomes bloated, loyalty weakens, and corruption spreads quietly through institutions. Records are altered, taxes disappear, and trust erodes. The past, once stabilizing, becomes a burden. Traditions resist change, institutions grow rigid, and innovation slows. Decline does not arrive suddenly, it begins as stagnation. Maintenance replaces creativity, defense replaces expansion, and control replaces inspiration. Rulers grow anxious. They look backward for legitimacy, invoking ancient glory. Monuments are restored, ceremonies emphasize continuity, and history is repeated loudly, as if volume can prevent loss. But continuity cannot stop decay. Outsiders press against borders, sometimes they invade, sometimes they settle, and sometimes they are invited in as allies or mercenaries. The definition of civilized blurs. Internal divisions deepen. Civil wars erupt, successions are contested, and authority fractures. Multiple versions of truth compete. Propaganda intensifies, and history becomes a weapon rather than a guide. Yet even in decline, creativity persists. New cultures blend at the edges, new ideas form in the margins, and new faiths spread quietly. Out of fragmentation comes transformation. Cities shrink or are abandoned. Languages shift, and institutions fall apart. Ruins accumulate, standing silent under open skies. People walk among stones laid by ancestors they barely remember. They tell stories of former greatness, mixing truth with legend. Memory becomes melancholic. The question changes from how do we expand to how do we endure? Old history approaches its end, not an end of humanity, but an end of the ancient world as it once was. What comes next will build upon these remains, reshaping them into something new. The past will never disappear, it will be reused. The world feels different now. It is not empty, nor ruined beyond repair, but changed. The great empires that once seemed eternal have loosened their grip. Some still exist in name, while others exist only in story. Roads crack, cities thin, and authority fragments into smaller centers of power. Yet life does not stop. It rarely ever does. In places once governed by distant rulers, communities begin to rely on themselves again. Local leaders emerge, and old customs return, blended with newer traditions left behind by empire. The weight of centralized power lifts, and with it comes both uncertainty and freedom. People adapt, as they always have. Fields are still planted, animals are still tended, and children are still born into a world shaped by those who came before. But the rhythm has changed. Where once there were imperial decrees, now there are local agreements. Where once law was enforced by distant systems, now it is shaped by tradition and necessity. Memory becomes personal again, carried in stories rather than archives. Writing does not disappear, but it becomes rarer. Literacy narrows, and knowledge concentrates in certain places: monasteries, schools, and guarded libraries. Much is lost, but not everything. Loss is uneven. Some texts vanish forever, others survive by chance, and a few are carefully protected, copied by patient hands in quiet rooms. These preserved fragments will one day become seeds. The ancient world recedes into the background, no longer lived, but remembered, sometimes accurately, sometimes not. Ruins become landmarks, old roads guide new paths, and former capitals inspire awe, even in decay. People look at the past differently now, not as a model to copy exactly, but as a source of authority, mystery, and meaning. Ancient names are spoken with reverence, legends grow around real events, and history slowly transforms into myth. This transformation is not a failure of memory, it is a function of time. As societies reorganize, belief systems evolve again. Some old gods fade, while others change form. New spiritual ideas spread, ideas that emphasize inner life, moral responsibility, and hope beyond worldly power. Faith becomes quieter for some, and stronger for others. Community becomes central once more. People rely on neighbors, family, and shared obligation. Identity becomes tied to land, language, and custom rather than empire. Small differences matter again. The world feels slower. Travel is harder, communication takes longer, and change is gradual. This slowness allows reflection. Philosophy does not vanish. It transforms. Thought turns inward, asking not how to rule the world, but how to live well within it. Ethics, humility, patience, and endurance gain importance. Art changes too. Grand monuments give way to modest expressions. Beauty appears in patterns, manuscripts, music, and storytelling. Creativity becomes intimate. Knowledge continues quietly. Astronomy is preserved through observation, medicine survives through practice, and mathematics endures through necessity. Much is simplified, but not erased. And beneath all of this, something powerful is happening. Humanity is integrating its past. The long journey from wandering bands to settled villages, from villages to cities, and from cities to empires, has left deep impressions. Lessons, some learned painfully, linger. That power concentrates and corrupts, that memory is fragile, that systems rise and fall, and that people endure. These lessons are not written everywhere, but they are felt. Generations grow up among ruins and stories. They inherit a world shaped by countless lives they will never know. They accept this inheritance without question, just as their ancestors accepted fire, language, and land. Time stretches onward. New technologies will come, new systems will form, and new conflicts will arise. But they will all rest upon the same foundations laid long ago: the need to belong, the desire to understand, and the impulse to remember. Old history does not truly end here. It fades into the background of everything that follows. Every law carries its shadow, every city echoes older ones, and every story is shaped by stories before it. When people sit quietly at night, listening to the wind or watching the stars, they are doing the same thing their ancestors did tens of thousands of years ago. The questions may be framed differently, but the feeling is the same. Where did we come from? Where are we going? And what will remain? History does not answer these questions directly. Instead, it offers continuity, a sense that life moves forward, not in straight lines, but in spirals, returning to familiar challenges with new understanding. The deep past, once silent and distant, is now woven into everything. It is woven into language, into belief, into habit, and into thought. And so, the story of old history does not conclude with an ending, but with a soft settling, a moment of stillness where the past rests beneath the present, steady and unseen, supporting whatever comes next. Time continues, quietly, patiently, and endlessly.